Welcome back, Silver and Black today. Thanks for being back with us. Yes, it's time to talk Raiders football. We are an Odyssey original podcast covering the Las Vegas Raiders. Also heard, if you're listening to us on Saturday, forgot we switched days, on The Bet in Las Vegas on the radio. So thanks to our Las Vegas audiences for being with us too. I say us because there's two of us here. That's right. He, the guy over there across from me, yes, a few states away from me, but nonetheless through the magic of the interwebs. He is my co-host. He is Moe Moton, senior NFL writer at Bleacher Report, a.k.a. Midtown Mo. You can catch him on the X or x.com at Moe Moton, Moemoton. You can follow me, Scott Gulbransen, your other host, at LV Gully. The show is SNB Today. All right, Mo, we're jumping in here. Some news, obviously, yesterday. We'll get to the wild and the wacky world of one Mr. Chandler Jones. Seems to at least start to maybe get rectified, meaning if he needs help, which it appears he does, the Raiders have put him on the non-injury list, excuse me. Let me get that out straight, which means he can spend time away from the team. He does not count on the roster any longer. He goes on that injured reserve, basically, is what it is. But it got stranger as things went on. The weird accusation about his niece or goddaughter being molested. And then you get another one, and this is the one I remember being most shocked by. Not all the other wackiness, because we've seen that, but his condition. You commented on it when he posted a picture on Instagram where he looked really skinny. I mean, this is a guy who plays defensive end in the NFL, and so you knew something was going on there because he appears to be having lost a ton of weight, and then, of course, he's tagging LeBron James in some weird posts. I'm just glad, I'm hoping at least, that we don't see him on social media and that he gets the help he needs.
It went from what's going on with Chandler Jones and people were making jokes of it because that's what people do on social media, and then it went to disturbing. And as time went on, my comments about it, kind of went down. And I did comment on about his look because he did post a video. And listen, Chandler Jones usually plays at about 6'5", 260, 270. And I commented he looks like a lanky safety right now. Mm-hmm. He barely looks over 200 pounds. And remember, when you're tall like that, you're barely over 200 pounds, you're thin. You look very, very thin. And remember, we heard reports in training camp that, Chandler Jones was slimming down. Now I'm wondering if that was based on something he was doing, decisions he made to slim down versus, because usually when you hear a player slims down before training camp, you're thinking, oh, the team has plans for him to be more agile pass rusher, right?
Right.
That may have not been the case, and that may have been why they sent him home in the first place. But I'm not going to even comment on all the stuff that he's posted on social media because none of it to me makes sense, which, again, is disturbing. So I'm just going to say I hope Chandler Jones, whatever is going on with him, he gets right, he gets well. But from a football perspective, he will miss at least the next 4 games. The Raiders have not written him off as saying that he can't come back. They're just going to put him on this list and hope that his condition or whatever is going on with him improves. In the meantime, the Raiders have to find out what to do with their pass rush because with Chandler Jones out, Malcolm Kuntz and Tyree Wilson are going to have to step up unless someone else comes in.
Exactly. And I have to say, and I think a couple people in the NFL pointed this out, and I think even Adam Schefter did, which was, the Raiders are doing what they can and are doing right by him. They're trying to get him the help that they feel he believes. Now, we'll get the true story one day, but, a lot of people go to he sucks, cut him, and all that kind of stuff. It's a human being, and so I agree with you. I think the conversation with Chandler Jones now is over. They miss him on the field. We can talk about that, but about the rest of it, hopefully now with this move, I don't know. Hopefully this means there's been some communication going on and they're getting them the help he needs. Other health news was Devontae Adams healthy back on the field. We saw Jakobi Meyers on Wednesday out at practice, still listed as doubtful as we get the report from the team. So to get Jakobi Meyers back would be a huge get, and Devontae Adams seems like he's got no ill effects after getting hit in the head in the Buffalo game. So the Raiders start to get back healthy with their wide receivers. Mo, they're going to need them. We're going to get into Pittsburgh later as we have Jarrett Bailey from USA Today and the Steel Curtain on in the final segment of the show. But I tell you what, they're going to need every bit of offense they can get. That Pittsburgh defense has injuries on it, but the front of the Pittsburgh Steelers is playing at midseason form.
They have a guy they drafted on day 2, Keanu Benton. I wanted the Raiders to draft. They're going to be counting on him a lot because Cam Hayward is out, but if he had groin surgery. Mm-hmm. Minka Fitzpatrick got nicked up on Monday night, had a chest injury. So there are some absences or potential absences in that defense. But as you saw Monday night against the Cleveland Browns, that defense scored 12 of their 26 points and is still the strong link on that football team. So the Raiders are going to have their offense is going to have their work cut out for them. I still feel like it's an even matchup. We'll get into that later in the show. But what I'm really looking for, and I said this on my Bleach Report Live on Wednesday, if the Raiders are going to win this game, Josh Jacobs has to be productive and he has to be efficient.
By the way, our good friend, was it Oakland History 76 on Twitter, posted the fact that the Raiders rushing totals, it's the second worst in team history to start out 2 games of a season as far as the running production. Now, that's only 2 games, so there's still time to overcome. It doesn't mean it's going to happen. We're not trying to pile on here, but it just goes to show you they have to do that. To talk about the Raiders' run game, by the way, coming up after the break, we're going to be joined by NFL fullback, most recently of the Cleveland Browns, also of the Minnesota Vikings, Johnny Stanton. We're going to talk to him about the Raiders' run game, what he sees, and we're going to ask him, too, when you're having trouble running the ball, then what do you do? It's one of those things where, as a player, how does that impact the locker room and everything like that? So we're going to talk to Johnny Stanton after the break as well, and then of course Jarrett Bailey, as I talked about with the Pittsburgh Steelers. And so you look at this, Mo, you look at how this team is gelling. Okay, we heard the press conference yesterday. We heard McDaniels talk about how difficult the Steelers are going to be, and they will be defensively for that Raiders offense. We talked about last show the Raiders offense languishing. Everybody's talking about the defense, as they should. The defense has to get better. But at the same time, complementary football. I keep going back to it over and over and over again. The Raiders' offense is a big concern because of all of the people they have. The defense is missing talent. The offense seemingly has enough talent to score points and get up, but they are now last in the league in scoring with 13.5-point average per game after 2 games. Something's got to change there and change quick.
I'm going to say this again, and I'm going to sound like a broken record, but they got to add variety to their offense. There's no way that Michael Mayer, Trey Tucker, and Hunter Renfrow should add up to 3 targets in 2 games. And, I mean, you have these guys around. You brought them in to have a more explosive or productive offense, right? So if you're depending on 1 or 2 players a game, that's not good enough. And I believe Josh McDaniels said after the Bills lost that Hunter Renfrow should have had more targets. Hunter Renfrow didn't get a target until garbage time against the Buffalo Bills. So, as you said, complementary football matters. So, in order for Josh Jacobs to have more room to run the ball, the Raiders have to force defenders to respect Jimmy Garoppolo's arm. Because if they don't respect Jimmy Garoppolo's arm, they're just going to say, we're going to load the box. And we're not going to let Josh Jacobs beat us. We want Jimmy Garoppolo to go to someone other than Devontae Adams to beat us. And that's basically what I think the Steelers will do. But the Steelers overall have a pretty good defense. So they can cover their corners. They can cover on the edge. They got TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith who can wreak havoc on opposite sides of that defensive line. Jimmy Garoppolo's had time to throw the ball. Hasn't been sacked yet. So right. The problem is not overwhelming pressure. The Raiders' offensive line, when it comes to pass blocking, is pretty good. It's the run blocking that's a bit of an issue. But I think assuming Jimmy G has time to throw the football against the Pittsburgh Steelers, he has to spread the rock around to other players other than Jacoby Myers if he plays in Devontae Adams.
Right. And the other thing here too, I mean, you talked about balance, but and the last point you just made, because I remember with the previous quarterback, it was like, oh, he's spreading the ball of 14. Why don't you just settle on your best receiver? And so now it's gone the other way and people are complaining too, but they have the point, which is, okay, so you have Devontae Adams, you have Hunter Renfrow, you have Michael Mayer, you have Austin Hooper. How are you? Oh, now that could be the quarterback thing. It could be Jimmy Garoppolo not comfortable, right? He just hasn't made that connection. But let's face it, you're going into week 3 now. Okay. You need to start opening things up. I also think that they have to get that balance. Like you and I talked about it before. Yes, you're not going to always be able to run the ball like you want to. So you have to be able to have balance. But you also need to establish that. And they got to come out early. They got to come out. They came out fast last game, Mo, but they have to come out fast in a different way on defense this time, I think, too. That defense is going to have to show. Patrick Graham said at the press conference this week that they have to come out strong and they have to come out fast and they have to give their offense opportunities.
Interesting stat for the Steelers. They're last in the league. They have the fewest first downs overall. I don't think they have a first down in the first quarter yet. So if the Raiders come out how they came out against the Buffalo Bills with that successful first drive for a touchdown, that could be big for them. Now, hopefully they don't just go into a shell for the rest of the game as they did against the Buffalo Bills.
Right.
But if they can come out as they came out against Buffalo, it could be the start of something good for the Raiders, and they can potentially hold the lead. Kenny Pickett hasn't thrown multiple touchdown passes in a game in his career yet. So just as bad as the Raiders' offenses look, the Steelers' offense is just as bad, if not worse.
Yep, absolutely. So there's that. But, that's the kicker here is you have to get both sides of the Raiders team to start playing better football, offense, defense, everything. We saw some numbers. Jermaine Illuminor, one of the top tackles in the league at pass blocking, by the way. I remember people telling us that he wasn't going to make it, but good on them. It's a weird thing because the Raiders are putting up good numbers in certain areas, like you talked about the pass protection, but they can't move the ball and they can't score. So what does that all mean? It means they're not in sync. And so they have to get these things in sync.
I've been on the Jermaine Illuminor, I guess you could say, bandwagon, and people go, Jermaine Illuminor is overrated. I know he had the false start in the first game, and people roll their eyes every time he has a penalty. But the PFF stat is no tackle has played more snaps to him without giving up a sack, a hurry, or a quarterback hit. You got to respect it. He's playing well. He's playing good football when it comes to pass protection.
He absolutely is. Okay, well, we are going to step aside here with our first break. When we come back, Johnny Stanton, NFL fullback. Right now, he's a free agent, so he's looking for his next opportunity. But he's played for the Cleveland Browns, played with Nick Chubb, by the way, and Kareem Hunt, who just re-signed with the Browns after the horrific Nick Chubb injury. And we talked to him about that up on SportsNot this week as well, so you can watch that video up there. But he's going to come on and talk about the Raiders' running game, and we're going to be able to get his perspective on it, what he sees, and what do you do when your running game is struggling, and not just because of your running back, it's because of the line and all of that. So we're still going to figure that out when we get back. You're with Mo and Scott. This is Silver and Black Today. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Silver and Black Today, an Odyssey original podcast covering the Las Vegas Raiders. I am Scott Gulbransen, your host, of course, with my co-host Moe Moton. He's a senior NFL writer over at Bleacher Report. You can also catch his Raiders work up on sportsnot.com, where you can catch my coverage of the Raiders and the NFL and baseball. I'm writing some baseball, Mo. It's foreign to me again, trying to get back into the, it reminds me of being in college and doing sports writing and covering all different sports, because suddenly you have to, different cadence, different language, all that. But as a writer, it's fun. It's good to get back to some diversity of writing, which is cool.
How about a little NBA, Scott? Little Knicks action.
I'm going to do some NBA. As much as it'll pain me, I have to do some NBA. College basketball, you name it. We'll get there. All right. We are excited to bring in a guy I wanted to get on the show to talk about the Raiders and their run game, and that is Johnny Stanton. He is a NFL fullback, formerly of the Cleveland Browns and the Minnesota Vikings. He also played at one University of Nevada, Las Vegas. Yes, he's a UNLV Rebel, where he played quarterback, actually. You can follow Johnny on x.com at Johnny Stanton IV. I have that right, Johnny, right? Or is it Stanton IV only on X?
You got it right. No, I know. I have the little bit of the, got to switch it up between the social media and the website, but you got it right there on the screen.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, Johnny, like I said, played most recently with Cleveland, and you played in the XFL as well, correct?
Oh man, for I don't even know what less than a cup of coffee is.
Was it?
I got cut by the XFL to make it as a Cleveland Brown. So
that's right.
I guess they wanted a failed XFL fullback. Yeah,
that's right. That's not a bad trade-off right there. Going to the Browns. There you
that's
go.
an upgrade.
No, absolutely.
But Johnny, we wanted to have you on to talk about the Raiders. We talked about it in the first segment. The Raiders, through 2 games, have the lowest running output they've had the third lowest running output they've had in franchise history. This is going back to 1966. They're off to a rough start. And, of course, Josh Jacobs held out due to the contract issue during training camp. We talked about guys stay in shape now all year round, but coming in, take a little bit of time to get going. But what we've seen in the first couple games with the Raiders in the run game isn't necessarily about Josh Jacobs. And we wanted to bring you on to talk about that. I know you watched a little bit of the film, and when you look at the Raiders, a lot of people want to say, oh, Josh Jacobs, he's out of shape, he's fat. It's hard to run the ball in the NFL, Johnny, isn't it, when you have three guys on top of you as soon as you get handed the ball?
Oh, absolutely. It's tough to see the lack of chemistry that there is right now between the offensive line and the running backs. There is chemistry that absolutely develops, just like there's chemistry between a quarterback and his receivers and a quarterback and the offensive line. The running back needs to understand the tendencies of the offensive line. And when you hold out for that long and miss that much of training camp, it's tough to be able to rebuild that. So that's what I was seeing, was hesitancy in the backfield that you don't normally see from Josh Jacobs. Some shuffle stepping, some, undisciplined cutting in the backfield from him, which you don't normally see from one of the best running backs in the NFL. So that's the one thing I noticed, especially in this last game, first snap from scrimmage, getting hit in the backfield by his own offensive lineman being driven back. That immediately hurts your trust in your own offensive line, which you need to have. So it seemed like the rest of that game, that play was in the back of his mind, not completely being able to trust that he and the offensive line were on the same page. And what was so interesting is later on in the game, when Zamir White ends up taking over, when the Raiders start waving the white flag, he didn't seem to know any better, to be honest. He didn't seem to know, he didn't have that distrust in the offensive line against, in that game. So he's running full speed ahead, where it seems like Josh Jacobs is looking for holes when he needs to be diving forward, just trying, knock out as many yards as possible, building up that chemistry with the O-line.
So as Scott said, I know a lot of people want to blame Josh Jacobs because he's the big money maker. People don't talk about offensive linemen unless they're giving up sacks or hurries, right? Everyone wants to blame the running back if the running game isn't up to par. But I will ask you, being a former ball carrier, what makes I don't want to say perfect, but an ideal ground attack between the offensive line, the way the offense is running, and the way the running back, as you said, has chemistry with the offensive line? Because it's more than just a running back hitting a hole. It's more than just guys getting their block at the line of scrimmage. It's a team sport, right? So there's a lot of parts to this. What's an ideal ground attack look like to you?
No, absolutely. Just as much as the run game can affect the pass game in play action, the pass game does the same thing, has the same effect for the run game. Getting out of defensive sets where they have 7, 8, 9 men in the box is really helpful for the offensive line to be able to get on their guys. They've gone against some good defenses. The defensive line that they've played against have done a great job of plugging up those holes, creating arm tackles, making it hard for the offensive line to be able to get to the second level, and letting backside linebackers make some really impressive plays in the hole. But yeah, it's when you're unable to have that, like I said, when you're unable to have that chemistry with the offensive line to be able to press the hole, make last second cuts, it's hard to be able to get those extra yardage that you see from the league's top running backs and that you've seen in the past from Josh Jacobs.
Well, Johnny, when you look at that then, and clearly they have to get into that rhythm and get that trust and get all that back again. What do you do? How do you create that? I mean, when you're out at practice during the week before game day, how does that come together for a guy like Josh Jacobs? He knows all those guys. He played with them last year, but the confidence there, how do you get that?
It's tough because you're not going to practice the same way in the season as you ever do in training camp. It's never, as the further along you go in the season, practices are going to become less and less intense. Personally, you need to be able to make that mindset shift to thinking about practice like you might in training camp, going through the tough practices, going even harder when you do get tired. That's the only way you're going to be able to build up that chemistry. Obviously, as the season goes on, that trust is going to build, that chemistry is going to build with the offensive line. I don't see this being a problem long-term in the season because they're still the same guys. They're still the same members of that running attack. Josh Jacobs is still Josh Jacobs. It's just taking a little bit longer to be able to get into the swing of things.
So, Johnny, let's say the Raiders do struggle to establish a run against the Pittsburgh Steelers. And let's not say they abandon the run, but would you say that an alternative solution would be the short passing game, because we saw a lot of Josh McDaniels do a lot of that with New England when the run game wasn't going, short passes to the running backs. And also, how important, and I know the answer to this, but I want you to explain it, being a former ball carrier, how important is it for a running back to pick up those pass protection blocks if they want to get on the field on third down? Because Zamir White, from what we saw, hasn't had a lot of opportunities on third down as a pass catcher. I'm not saying that that's the issue with him, pass protection, but how important is that if you want to get on the field on third down?
Yeah, I know the Raiders use Amir Abdullah in the backfield a lot on third down because he's such an incredible scat back and is so experienced behind the line of scrimmage and seeing what the defense is doing and understanding who is coming and who he needs to pick up. He's a vet. I was with him at University of Nebraska, and for like a minute in Minnesota, the dude knows how to ball. As for Zamir White, he hasn't had those opportunities. Looking at Josh Jacobs on third down and in these passing situations, he's having to do a lot of chipping along the edge. They're not asking him to do a ton of pass protection from the backfield. And there have been one or two plays this season so far that I've seen where he has blown up pass protection. That's going to happen. That's to even the best running backs in the NFL, like Josh Jacobs. That's going to happen every once in a while. But the amount that they're using him in the pass game is actually a great way to be able to get him involved. He's not lacking the touches. As you know, I think he had 4 or 5 catches just as checkdowns from Jimmy G on this last Sunday. He's able to get the ball, and the production that he's able to put out is actually very useful. He's getting 9-10 yards a catch, but obviously you want to be able to build up that run game to be able to help guys on the outside to gain some space, get those linebackers sucked in, get the play action game back involved, because that's just not what you're seeing from the offenses right now.
All right, Johnny, before we let you go, I have to get your comments on another guy that we'd like to see more of is Jakob Johnson. And since you're a fullback yourself, talk a little bit about him, man. Is he not the freakish throwback that we all love?
He really is. He is not the prototypical fullback that you're seeing, the Kyle Juszczyks, the Mike Burtons of the world right now. There are only a handful of guys in the league who are like him, and it's cool to be able to see somebody who does have the neck roll, who's putting his nose in there and just blowing up plays. He has had a good couple games. That's the one thing that I want to see more from that running game, honestly, is they're using him plenty. They're using 21, 22 personnel a whole bunch, but being able to see Josh Jacobs really be riding the back of Johnson's like heels. You know, a fullback will never get upset at you running him over from the backside. You know, he wants to be able to see the hole. He wants to be able to build, break up the defensive line, the linebackers. He wants to blow it up for you to be able to come right off his heels, right behind you. He does not want to see the linebacker waiting to be able to run around you to get to the running back. If you are a yard behind him, nipping at his heels, he is more than happy. So I'm looking for him to be able to really take advantage of those 21 personnel plays and just bust out some big runs.
All right, Johnny, thanks for being with us. You can follow Johnny on x.com at Johnny Stanton IV. It's Johnny Stanton the 4th. And check out his website too, as well, with the same name. Johnny, we'll have you on again real soon. We appreciate it, man.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
All
Appreciate
right, there you go, folks. We got a little bit of the running game here, and to talk about the Raiders running game, of course, the struggling Raiders running game. And when we come back here from the break, we're going to be joined by another great guest, and that is Jarrett Bailey. And we're going to talk about the Steelers and get his thoughts on the game coming up on Sunday. You're listening to Silver and Black today, an Odyssey original podcast, heard on The Bet on the radio in Las Vegas. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. Home stretch here on Silver and Black today, an Odyssey original podcast heard on the radio in Las Vegas, of course, Sin City, the City of Lights, whatever you want to call it. Thanks for listening to us on the air there as well. Scott Gulbransen and Moe Moton back with you. And for this final segment of the show, we have a special guest with us. That is Jarrett Bailey, USA Today. Also, the Steel Curtain. Ooh, yeah, the site covering the Pittsburgh Steelers, of course. And the Raiders and Steelers have such a great history, and we wanted to have him come on and talk about the Steelers. Jarrett, thanks for being with us, man. We appreciate it.
Oh, I appreciate the invite, boys. Raiders week is always a very stressful one. As a young Steelers fan, this is a game that should not be taken for granted. So I'm looking forward to talking about it.
All right, well, let's jump in, because one of the things and I have to admit, I got suckered in, I bought in, and I'm not saying it's not going to happen, but a lot of expectations around the Steelers team. There was a lot of national media love, which I'm sure for you, growing up a Steelers fan, made you feel pretty good about it. And Mo was one of those guys who perpetuated it. And then they come out, have some injuries, obviously, on the defensive line. And then Kenny Pickett has been up and down. He hasn't been, the offense hasn't done what people thought. In fact, it's just not been very good. But that Steelers core of that defense is keeping it. We saw it against the Browns. We saw what they were able to do. Talk about the expectations coming in. Were they realistically, and they're just so far in the early sample size, not living up to it? Or do you think that the expectations are just right, or maybe we're just a little overplayed?
Yeah, I mean, the expectations nationally that you talked about, I think they didn't really start until like June, July, like right before training camp. But I was one of those people who, as a Steelers fan, I'd like to think that I've got a decent level head about the team. But coming in, I mean, you look at all the changes that they made and the additions that they made to the roster, looking at, okay, they won 9 games last year. You add a Darnell Washington. You bring in Patrick Peterson. You're bringing a bunch of new linebackers, a Cole Holcomb and a Landon Robertson. You bring in Quan Alexander in the preseason. And you look at all of that and you say, okay, nine wins last year. If Pickett can take a little bit of a jump forward, then yeah, this should be, a 10, 11 win team. And then they come out week 1 and lay the goose egg that they did, which, by the way, for those who don't know, the largest home opening loss in the Mike Tomlin era did the Steelers have in week 1. So it wasn't a good start. And now, yeah, they're 1-1 now, but they did their best to lose on Monday night. But Deshaun Watson said, "Alas, not old front. Allow me. I'll hold the loss this week." So, yeah, the expectations were certainly high, and with Mike Tomlin coach teams, they usually are. But yeah, man, to say that it's been disappointing so far would be it would be what's the phrase I'm looking for? It would be putting it very lightly.
Jarrett, without yelling "Fire Matt Canada" with your hair on fire, could you tell me what is the issue with the Steelers offense? You got Kenny Pickett going into his second year. You're expecting growth. You have these weapons, even without Deontay Johnson. As you said, you bring in Darnell Washington. You have Pat Freiermuth. You have George Pickens, who's one of my favorites. You have Jalen Warren come out of the backfield, Najee Harris. If you were the offensive coordinator, what would you fix? What are the tweaks that you would make to the Steelers offense to make it productive or efficient?
I know you told me not to say Matt Canada, but you just ran through such a talented group offensively, and it's hard not to say, yeah, the offensive coordinator is a big problem, and he is. I will say this though, people and Steelers fans are very quick, like you said, to be like, "Oh, Matt Canada is the only issue." Week 1 was not on Matt Canada. It was more on Kenny Pickett than anything. He's not making the throws that he needs to make. Week 1, he had Deontay Johnson was visibly irritated on the field week 1, and for good reason, because on a 3rd and 8 early in the game, Pickett sailed a pass on him when he was open over the middle. And then in the red zone, when they finally got a drive going, when they were down 20 at the end of the first half, Deontay runs a slant that if he catches, he walks into the end zone, which, by the way, didn't have a touchdown last year. Deontay Johnson did not. So I think he's just kind of keen on getting a touchdown. Pickett throws it behind him, and Deontay just looks down at his hand and looks back up at Kenny Pickett. Really? You couldn't hit me on that one. So Pickett has been the biggest issue through 2 games. Yes, Matt Canada's play calling isn't good. And it's hilarious too, because Luke Getsy of the Bears has been a focus of really bad play calling. Those two have polar opposite philosophies, is what I've noticed. Is Getsy is okay, everybody go deep, let this play develop, and Justin uncork it. Matt Canada is if you guys run past 8 yards, you're not getting the ball thrown to you. We're not doing that. So that a lot of it too is the lack of explosiveness, and any sort of explosiveness that there is in the offense is a catch and run, where okay, it's going to be a 9-yard pass, and then George Pickens is going to run it 70 additional yards. It's not going to be a bomb downfield, which is disappointing considering what we saw in the preseason. They looked to get a little bit more aggressive, where especially in the finale against Atlanta, there was a drive with Pickett. He threw a 30-yard pass to Deontay Johnson, then a 35-yard pass to George Pickens. I think that's where a lot of the optimism of the offense getting better came in, and we haven't really seen that so far. So the offensive line also needs to be better in terms of opening up things in the run game, because they still can't run the ball, which was something that was supposed to be fixed when they brought in Isaac Samalo. They drafted Broderick Jones, who hasn't really seen the field too much yet. I think that's going to change very soon because Dan Moore hasn't been good. there's a multitude of things that have gone wrong, and it's really most of it based over the past few seasons that Steelers fans have been accustomed to. Things are just repeating and not getting better.
Yeah, interesting there too, because like I said, for those of us who don't cover or follow the Steelers closely, you pick up stuff from other sport or other parts of the country, right, or other coverage. And yeah, the offense, the expectations around the offense. Now we switch to the defensive side. Obviously, Cam Hayward out, and that hurts. What are they doing up front? They look good against Cleveland for the most part, I thought. And this Raiders team is not moving the ball on offense either. So you look at these two teams; they're both in the basement in the NFL when it comes to moving the ball and scoring on offense. What are they doing on defense that's been effective? What do they get better at soon?
In terms of what's been good defensively, it's been what everybody expects to be good. TJ Watt is really good at football, and Alex Highsmith had a really nice game on Monday night where the first play from scrimmage, he has the pick six, and then he has the strip sack that TJ recovers for the eventual game-winning touchdown. So the usual suspects that you expect to be good have been really good. Minkah Fitzpatrick hasn't really made a ton of splash plays yet, but he's been where he needs to be, and he's been the only part of the secondary that's been good. Because you look at Patrick Peterson through 2 games, he hasn't been good. Levi Wallace, he hasn't been good. Now, what I would like to see is the fact that you drafted Joey Porter basically with a first-round pick. It was a 32nd overall pick. Start using him. Because in a limited time that he's been on the field, he's made plays. He had 2 PBUs against Cleveland, 1 on the first drive, 1 on the last play for the Browns that sealed the deal. Why is he not seeing the field more? If we don't see him more in week 3, I'm going to have a lot of questions about what is taking so long. And I think that's, in terms of fans that get on Mike Tomlin a lot, I'm not one of these people who's like, I'll fire Mike Tomlin. Mike Tomlin's a top 3 coach in the NFL. What fans do get right about Tomlin, though, is that he waits too long to make any sort of meaningful adjustments. And you look at what they have defensively right now where, okay, Levi Wallace through 2 games has proven that he probably shouldn't be the predominant CB2 on this team right now. And from what we've seen so far, maybe Patrick Peterson could go for a bump inside to the slot. Find a way to get Joey Porter Jr. on the field more, because in his limited snaps, he's played really well. And then up front, we've seen like DeMarvin Leal stepped up really well in the absence of Cam Hayward. Rookie Nick Herbig got in as well in the pass rush. Marcus Golden, like they have a lot of depth up front, which is a heck of a lot more than they've been able to say in recent memory. So I think adding guys like that, and I brought up the linebackers earlier, where Landon Roberts made a few really nice plays in the run game. Cole Holcomb has been a nice addition, and then Quan Alexander has also been playing well. So they've got guys, but Larry Ogunjobi too. I can't go without saying he had his best game as a Steeler on Monday night, and he's basically playing on like 1.5 feet because he's been dealing with a foot injury. So they had guys step up when they really needed to, but the secondary, especially the cornerbacks, those have been the biggest issues.
You kind of answered it, but I'll ask you this directly, because you mentioned Cam Hayward being out. I read articles where Steelers writers are saying unleash Joey Porter Jr. So you're not the only one saying it. But if you're on the opposite sideline, if you're the Raiders offense, if you're Josh McDaniels, where are you attacking the Steelers defense right away from the jump? Is it running up the middle because Cam Hayward is not there? Or are you going deep and going after the secondary? I'm
running on them until they prove that they can stop it, because through 2 weeks, they haven't been able to stop it. Christian McCaffrey averaged 7 yards a carry. And the Browns just ran for $195 on them. They haven't been good at stopping the run. So until now, I think they would have been a lot more successful had, the unfortunate injury to Nick Chubb not happened, because they were having success running the ball. So if I'm the Raiders, I'm pounding the ball to Josh Jacobs, and I'm saying, all right, Pittsburgh, stop us. And if you can, tip the cap and you try to find another way to go about it. The Steelers tend to play a lot of really soft coverages, and that leads to a lot of, intermediate throws, short throws that wouldn't go for much yardage, but when you're throwing for 6 yards a clip, that's constantly moving the chains, establishing long drives. And if anybody is good at doing that, it's Josh McDaniels. So I think that both of these matchups really favor the Raiders this week, and that's why, as a Steelers fan, I'm not looking forward to Sunday night, because I feel like he's going to. I'm not a fan of Josh McDaniels, the head coach, but Josh McDaniels, the offensive mind, knows what he's doing, and I promise you, there are going to be fans that are so cocky about this game, like, oh, it's the Raiders. They just lost by 4 touchdowns. Who cares? Well, they're going to find out very soon that the Raiders are a bad matchup for the Steelers.
Yeah, and it's interesting you say that, because you talked about Josh McDaniels and his offensive prowess. you might want to spend some time on Twitter with Raider fans because they will tell you the opposite of that based on what's happening. But that's just that's just fans. Hey, that's the way you feel when your team's not doing well. But we know for the Raiders, Jarrett, that this game, it's the home opener. It's Sunday Night Football. Nobody wants to start 1-3. Okay, nobody wants to start 0-3. Nobody wants to start 1-3. Coming into this, 1-2 coming into this game. When you see this game for the Steelers, how important is it for them to win this game early on to set a pace, especially if they can get some more offensive success?
Yeah, I mean, it's important because you look at who they have after this. I mean, they got Houston on the road after this, which is a winnable game and a game that they should win. So, I mean, if you're the Steelers and you can bounce back from a bad week 1 performance and win 3 straight, you're feeling pretty good. They got an early bye. Their bye week this year is week 6. But you look at how everybody else in this division is performing right now. Cleveland doesn't look good. The Bengals are off to their second straight slow start, and Burrow's dealing with that calf injury. Baltimore, they didn't look good week 1. Yes, they won. They won 25-9, but Lamar had a QBR of 13 in that game. And he played better against Cincinnati, but I don't want to say put an asterisk on it because I know that's been, for some reason, a really popular phrase this season already. But I want to see the Ravens and Lamar and this new system with Todd Monken, keep. I don't want it to just be a one-game thing. I want to keep seeing it prolonged to really believe in the fact, okay, this Todd Monken thing can work. Baltimore, by the way, already dealing with a ton of injuries where their secondary is really injured. Odell Beckham is already dealing with an injury. J.K. Dobbins is gone. So the division's still really wide open. And if you're the Steelers and you can get off to a 3-1 start, that you're in a really good spot, especially going forward. They don't have that difficult of a schedule. I think their most difficult game remaining would be against Jacksonville, and that game is at home. So they have that benefit for them. But in terms of the division, it's still wide open. And if you can get off to a 3-1 start, you're in a very good spot.
Yeah, the division I thought was going to be one of the best. Sorry, Mo, for stepping on you there, but I thought it was going to be one of the best. And now you look at, what's going on in the division. It's so crazy. We knew it would be competitive. We just thought it would be for different reasons. Mo, go ahead.
So piggybacking off that, I know the history fact is out there. I've said it on my Bleacher Report Lives. The Steelers haven't gone on the road to beat the Raiders since 1995, right? Pickett wasn't even born yet. So
I wasn't even born yet.
You weren't even born yet. So I was about 9 years old. I'm old. Okay. But yeah, I mean, looking at that fact, I know some people don't take those things into heavy consideration because obviously teams change. But, there were some good Ben Roethlisberger teams that couldn't get the job done. But knowing that fact and knowing the history, are you panicking if the Steelers lose this game? Is it man overboard, hit the panic button right now? Or is it, as you just said a few moments ago, the Steelers just don't match up well against the Raiders? You didn't expect the win here.
I think it depends on if they lose, if they're at least competitive, the offense looks better. I don't think that's a panic button. If they go out and it's, a 27-6 loss or something of that nature where the Steelers offense is just as bad as it's ever looked, if Tomlin doesn't come out Monday and say Matt Canada is no longer our offensive coordinator, then people are going to be pissed, man. And I'm going to be one of them. So context definitely matters when it comes to the loss, assuming, in this world, if we're assuming that they do lose, it just depends on how. If it's like a shootout and it's 34-31, I think you can kind of live with that because I think some fans just want to see that they can hang in shootouts. It doesn't matter who it's against. Yeah. But if it's just an embarrassing loss again to a team that, I don't want to make it sound like the Steelers are some high and mighty team, but a Raiders team that I don't have a lot of expectations for this season, the Steelers can't take them lightly because the Steelers aren't good either. And if they do and they get blown out, then yes, I think it'll be time to hit the panic button because that means that, okay, in 2 out of 3 games, everything that could have gone wrong has gone wrong. And that's not a good sign.
Absolutely. Well, Jarrett, we appreciate you being with us, talking a little bit about the Steelers. You can follow Jarrett on x.com at jbaileyNFL. Also catch his work up on Behind the Steel Curtain, where he writes about the Steelers. Well, listen, man, good luck to you. Hopefully have you on down the road, talk some more NFL football as the season rolls on.
Absolutely, boys. Cheers. Appreciate it.
All right, there you go. Great having Jarrett on. Great follow, by the way, on x.com. So make sure you do that. Yeah. Always in tune with everything, really, in the NFL, not just the Steelers. Well, he talked about the Steelers because it's close to his heart, but we certainly appreciate him coming on. Mo, how do you see this coming out, man, this game coming out? Because I think fans, it's the home opener. They want to start off well. They want to start off with a win at home. And I think it's important for the Raiders to start off with a win at home. And I just think it's a toss-up. I think the Raiders could easily win the game. I think the Raiders could easily lose the game. I think it's going to be a close one.
I think these teams are evenly matched. I know Raider fans are going to say the Steelers have a much better defense, and they do. But I think the Raiders, on paper, when you look at the names on the back of the jerseys, have a better offense actively. Are you taking Davante Adams and Josh Jacobs, or are you taking George Pickens and Najee Harris? I'm taking Josh Jacobs and Davante Adams every day of the week. Now, you have to get the ball to Davante Adams. You have to open up running lanes for Josh Jacobs for those guys to be effective. So I think it's a matter of, it's going to boil down to which offensive line plays better. I know people want to focus on the Steelers defense and can the Raiders force turnovers with their defense, but Jarrett just talked about it. The offensive line for the Steelers hasn't played well. The Raiders offensive line pass blocks well, run blocking, so I think it's going to be one of those muddied up games where it's low scoring. On my Bleacher Report betting column, I have the Raiders winning 23-20. So I have the Raiders covering their 2.5-point spread at the time from DraftKings. And I had them winning straight up. So like Jarrett just said, the Raiders could be a bad matchup for this Steelers team. And I'll go as far as to say, not that I expect to win, but I expect the Raiders to play well against the Steelers team.
Yeah, and I like the Raiders in a close one too. I'm not going to give a score prediction, but I do think it's within that range of the spread, as you just mentioned. And I go back to what Johnny talked about last segment too, around Josh Jacobs getting comfortable and getting confidence in that offensive line. That's important, and I think that has to start early in this game. They have to establish the run early in this game. I like that they're back home. They spent last week in West Virginia for bonding. But, you're not at home. You're not in your own bed. You're not in your own facility. You're not getting ready for a game in your home stadium. I think maybe this is where we see them do it. Yeah, you can call me a glass half full on this, but this is the time they do it. And to Jarrett's point about the matchup, they should be able to run the ball on this Pittsburgh defense and establish it early.
And they have to. I make that imperative. I said it at the beginning of the show. I said it on my Bleacher Report Live. Josh Jacobs has to be effective for them to win this game. They're not going to win this game by throwing the football 12 times to Davante Adams. He may get his numbers, but the Steelers are going to say, we'll let Davante Adams get his as long as he doesn't reach the end zone, but Josh Jacobs is not getting his and will make the Raiders' offense one-dimensional. That is not the way to win football games against a good defense. The Raiders have to be a balanced attack. I hope we get to see it for the first time really this season because Josh Jacobs hasn't gotten going yet. But hopefully 3 weeks in, he starts to find his mojo and the Raiders' offense gets back on track.
Yes, and before we go to the defense, we have to see some improvement there. We got to see, especially against this anemic Steelers offense, we have to see that defensive line break through, man. We have to see it. Brian Baldinger, our buddy Baldy here at Odyssey, did a really critical video of Tyree Wilson. It's one play, but I get what he's saying, and that's the unfortunate part about the Chandler Jones situation too, is they didn't get the chance, which we thought they would do, and they probably had the plan to do, was to ease him in over time. But Mo, we got to see something out of the front of that defense this week for this team to start taking that next step.
Shout out to the Raider fans there on my Bleacher Report Live on Wednesday. They came up, they kind of drummed up this idea that the Raiders need to shake up their defensive line because I had a graphic up and it showed all the, the PFF grades of, their defensive tackles. Now, grades are subjective, but you don't need an eye test to understand that the Raiders' interior of their defensive line has been playing pretty soft.
Yeah.
They gave up 183 rushing yards to the Buffalo Bills at about 5.2, 5.3 yards per carry. James Cook had 123 yards. You cannot have that type of run defense when you're going against the Pittsburgh Steelers, who are usually a physical football team. So if Kenny Pickett isn't clicking, guess what? They're going to give the ball to Najee Harris and Jalen Warren. So the Raiders defense, if they have to call up Nesta J. Severa, which was a suggestion in my Bleacher Report Live, I would like to see Nesta J get more snaps this Sunday. We'll see if he does. I would like to see Isaac Rochelle still get more snaps. Now that you've opened up a roster spot with Chandler Jones on a non-football illness list, I want to see another defensive lineman get more snaps because the guys that they've had out there haven't been getting the job done.
No, yeah, and that includes Tillery, that includes Bilal Nichols. Bilal Nichols, I mean, just, been disappointing all the way around since he was signed. So they need to mix it up. I think this is what I said about offense, and I wrote a piece up on Raider Ramble about Trey Tucker as well, that they should get him more involved because the offense is not dynamic, and at least when they give him the ball, the guy's like a a jet, right? You get him out there, even on the run. The jet sweep run that he had was huge. I mean, whatever you got to do to get that offense rolling, you got to do it. So you can't just stick with the guys. You need to get Hunter Renfrow involved. You need to get Trey Tucker involved. And on the other side of the line, like you said, you need to mix in some of those guys, especially some of the young bucks. See what they got. I mean, what do you got to lose? You're not doing anything at this point. Right? So
Nesta Jason Vera is my number one guy. Trey Tucker, when he's on the field, you got to respect his speed. You're correct about that.
Absolutely. All right. That's going to close it out for this show. We'll see how Sunday Night Football goes for the Raiders. Either way, we'll be on live. Mo will be on live with the Bleacher Report app, Late Night with Mo. Late Night, Midnight with Midtown Mo. Oh!
Yes.
3
Yes.
M's.
Yes.
Midnight. Wait, midnight. Oh, I don't have the sound effects today. Midnight with Midtown Mo. I needed a really deep voice because I can't. Let's see. No, it's not going to work either. Oh, wait. Midnight. No, it's not working. Damn it. Okay. Anyway, enough of that. Midnight with Midtown Mo. You'll be on the app right after the game, right? Mm-hmm. And then Murph and I will be here as well doing our post game. Probably a shorter one just because it's so late.
Can I say something? Fans out there, lighten up on Murph, man. I understand it was a tough loss against the Bills. Murph is such a positive guy. I hate to see him get so much heat because he's a positive dude. And I understand it's hard to be positive after a loss like that to the Bills. Yeah. But be nice to Murph when he's in for me on Sunday on the post games. He's really a great guy doing great work in the Raiders community. Regardless if he's positive and super positive, and you think he's high on something after being so positive after a loss, cut that man a break. He's been a Raider fan, and he's seen a lot of bad Raider football, and he's just I feel like it's a long season. I'm sure he's probably said that. Look, bad loss, long season. Let's calm down just a little bit.
Yeah, he said, move past it. It's over. What are you going to do? By the way, too, Murph is that positive in real life. Like, that's him. And so people can hate on him. He doesn't care, which is good. But I care. It bothers me because he's the voice of the fan. These same people yelling about Murph are the ones telling me not to tell them how to fan, but they're telling him how to fan. It's kind of weird. But nonetheless, he's going to be on with us live. Go back. Last night I had fun. Big Corey and I on the PSF app in the Raiders room, did a little live stream. If you missed that, go check it out. We're also going to be doing the game live. So Sunday night, during the game, throughout the whole game, Corey and I will be there, and hilarity will follow, I'm sure. We're going to have fun on there. That's Raiders Uncensored, by the way. So I could actually use potty words, Mo. No. They're making fun of me. You saw Kelly Kreiner.
Scott Unleashed.
It's going to be fun, but so join us there. And then, of course, we'll be back with a new podcast on Tuesday, maybe a blitz on Monday, but most of you listen to the postgame show on Monday, so we'll be back for that. But make sure you follow Mo on Twitter, x.com/ishish, MOEMOTON. I am at LV Gully. Mo, I will talk to you like this Tuesday, but I'm sure I'll be blowing up your phone like we usually do over the game.
Of course. Hopefully we're talking about a win because people are ready to go man overboard already.
It's amazing after 2 weeks. But anyway, I understand it. They love their team. They're passionate. So we'll stick with them. All right. For our producer, Mike Robier, for Moe Moton, I am Scott Gulbransen. This has been Silver and Black Today. We'll talk to you guys next week. Raiders Steelers on Sunday Night Football. Enjoy.